Today we're going to talk about an update on Joe Manchin and his position on the filibuster, and I interview legal analyst and prosecutor Glenn Kirshner, where we discuss Matt Gaetz's rapidly devolving scandal, including a glaring hole in his story and how a pardon might still factor into all of this. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're listening to No Lie. So let's start off with Joe Manchin. Now, if you've been trying to keep up with where Manchin stands on the filibuster, good luck. He went from absolutely not touching the filibuster to, okay, maybe we'll reinstate the talking filibuster, and now it seems we've gone back to square one because we got this statement out of him most recently.
January 6th changed me, and I was very clear with everybody. I never thought in my life, I never read in history books to where our form of government had been attacked at our seat of government, which is Washington, D.C., at our capital, by our own people. Now, the British did it, but not Americans. So something told me, wait a minute, pause, hit the pause button, something's wrong. You can't have this many people split to where they want to go to war with each other.
Some of your colleagues joke that you're the president of the Senate now. I've heard them in the hallways remark that to you. Do you like this role? How does it feel?
Let me tell you about it, and I said this before and I'll say it again. I've watched people that had power and abused it. I've watched people that sought power and destroyed themselves. And I've watched people that had a moment of time to make a difference and change things and used it. I would like to be that third.
Okay, so Manchin is now saying that January 6th changed him, and you can't have this many people split that they want to go to war with each other. And so for that reason, he wants to keep the filibuster because it forces a bipartisan approach. In other words, Republicans just got rewarded for January 6th by allowing them to keep intact the only tool they have to prevent Democrats from fighting back against GOP efforts to actually rig the next election. Like, Republicans told their voters that the election was stolen. Their voters believed them and used that as justification to attack the Capitol. Those Republicans who lied in the first place then pointed to that and said, wow, look at what's happening. This fraud really was serious if all these people went and rioted, and then they started passing bills across the country to limit Democrats' ability to vote using their own lie as justification. Like, you want to talk about circular logic. And then to make matters worse, we have Joe Manchin also looking at the events of January 6th, which was an insurrection born out of the lie that the election was stolen, and him saying, wow, this is bad. You know what needs to happen? I need to make sure to protect the filibuster and prevent H.R. 1 from passing because it's not bipartisan. Like, of course it's not bipartisan. It means Republicans don't get to rig the game. Right now, they're scoring on a goal that's 27 feet wide, while the Democrats' goal is 2 feet wide. They're not going to help you pass a bill to make sure that those goals are the same size. And it's not just Manchin either. Kyrsten Sinema, the other Democratic holdout when it comes to the filibuster, she even tweeted, quote, voting rights are fundamental to our democracy. That's why we co-sponsored the For the People Act, legislation protecting Americans' voting rights and the integrity of our elections. The irony, of course, being that she's one of the only people standing in the way of this actually passing. Like, if you're one of, two people standing between reforming the filibuster, which is the very tool being used to prevent the For the People Act from passing, don't tweet platitudes about how important voting rights are, because it's not only empty rhetoric, but it's insulting to the rest of us who have half a brain and recognize that the only reason this bill isn't passing is because of the filibuster that she herself is protecting. And look, I usually try to take a really measured approach when it comes to Manchin. Sinema less so, because Mark Kelly, Arizona's other Democratic senator, comes from the same state. He's not pulling this deep red state shtick that she is. I honestly don't know what she's doing. But as for Manchin, at the end of the day, I do still think it's an electoral miracle that a Democrat was elected in West Virginia, and so I tend to give him a lot of slack. And so I don't really expect him to vote for most things, because I know that's the price for him to at least vote for some things, like the American Rescue Plan, for example, which passed by 1 vote. And so that's okay. Do I agree with it? No. But do I understand? Yes. But when we talk about the filibuster, it's always in the context of the For the People Act, and the passage of that bill is existential. This isn't like passing universal background checks or Medicare for all or something like that. It's not a matter of policy. It's a matter of democracy. It's a matter of Democrats continuing to be able to participate in government. It's existential. It's that if we don't pass the For the People Act, Democrats will be gerrymandered and suppressed to the point where we can't win, where the game is rigged so far out of our favor that the outcome is already decided. So look, I'll be the last person to beat up on Joe Manchin on any issue of policy, even if I disagree with him, but this is different. Because by continuing to protect the filibuster, he's not preserving the integrity of the Senate, he's enabling Republicans to relegate him into the permanent minority. And does he mean well? Probably. Probably. I'm sure that there's people who think that that's naive of me to say, but probably. But would Republicans do the same? Not a chance in hell. So basically, the GOP will allow Manchin to neuter himself in the name of bipartisanship, knowing full well that the second they're back in the majority, they'd forget the definition of bipartisanship. It would cease to exist in their vocabulary. They would mow him down like the stampede that killed Simba's dad. And that's the frustrating part, because Joe Manchin has to know that. Like, I get that he might yearn for the old days of the Senate, but they're gone. The Republicans have basically broadcast that to us by refusing to vote for even a bill like the COVID relief package, which had not only support of 3/4 of all Americans, but it was for relief for Americans in the middle of a pandemic. If they won't vote for that, guess what? They're not voting for anything. So we're playing two different games here. He's trying to fix something at the same time that the other team is trying to break it. And those two things will never reconcile. And I know that I talk about the filibuster a lot, but honestly, passing H.R. 1, the For the People Act, needs to be our first, second, and third priority. And that's not to say that other agenda items aren't important, because they are. And passing them is the mandate that Biden was elected to be able to pass. And I'll bet my last dollar that the American Rescue Plan saved people's lives, and I think the American Jobs Plan will be a boon to this country unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. But if we want to pass anything after 2022, after Republicans redraw the maps, after these new voter suppression bills take effect, then we need federal protections for our elections. Otherwise, we've got, a year and a half before we're looking at permanent minority rule. So we've got a lot of fights, but fixing the foundation of our democracy is number one. So our job right now is this. We have to both stay on these Democratic holdouts and keep reminding people why eliminating the filibuster is important, because it is the only thing standing in the way of passing the For the People Act, and that bill is our only and last hope to shore up our democracy. We're not trying to tip the scales, we're trying to balance them. You can be in favor of preserving the filibuster, or you can be in favor of preserving democracy, but not both. Okay, one last thing, and that is that I have a quick announcement about the audio version of this podcast, which you can find on any podcast platform by searching No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. And that is that I want to hear from you. So I'm going to try something new next week. If you have any questions or comments for me, send me a voice note via email, and I may feature it on the next episode and answer your question. The email address is podcast@briantylercohen.com. And remember, it has to be a voice note, meaning you've got to send me an audio file, which you should be able to do right from your phone. I believe there's an app called Voice Recorder on Android and Voice Memos on iPhones. Again, that's podcast@briantylercohen.com. So shoot me over your voice notes and check out the audio version of this podcast next week on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast to see if you got featured. So listen to my interview with legal analyst and prosecutor Glenn Kirshner, where we discuss Matt Gaetz' rapidly devolving scandal, including a glaring hole in his story and how a pardon might still factor into all of this. Check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel.